Hello there. How's it going?
Pretty good. That
Good. Long
last swallow
weekend.
of water.
I know. I was trying to get things together after the long weekend. I feel like I'm out of sorts and trying to
Yes.
get it together and all that kind of thing. But um, today we're talking about 4 feedback methods when you don't have the option to conduct usability testing. And that might be the case because of time, money, access to people to give you feedback, whatever the reasons are. We're here to give you some alternative options to consider. So, uh, let's first talk about what is usability testing. So, what's the whole goal and point of usability testing?
Oh, for me. Okay.
Yes,
Well,
I
I
don't
mean,
want to do all the talking.
lots of, yeah, right. So it's to gauge the effectiveness, the user perceptions, the challenges or pain points that are possibly going to occur with whatever you're creating, um, as well as enhancements that may be, on the may end up on the roadmap that comes out of that testing. So, the formal testing, formal, traditional one-on-one usability testing is usually very, very task focused, to identify, see if you're on the right track with those specific features or specific tasks. Yep. So
And,
it still has its place, even though we're going to talk about alternatives today. It's not taking away from the
absolutely.
merits of.
And the goal, ultimately, the goal of usability testing is to get to a place where you feel comfortable that 80 to 85% of your ideal or representative user can get what they need to get done. It's about getting the task done.
Yes.
So you might have preferences around styling and all that kind of thing that come up in your usability testing, but it's about getting stuff done.
Yep. Yep.
So you don't have time for usability testing. What can you do? So let's first talk about expert analysis. So what has been your experience around conducting what we call a heuristic analysis or an expert analysis? What's been your experience around that?
Well, I think it's kind of it's one, it's much cheaper. It's quicker, depending on, what evaluation, what you're evaluating. Some of these can be done in, a day, a matter of hours. And they really, my experience has been almost always do a heuristic no matter what you're going to do.
Mm-hmm.
Just get those expert eyes. It really helps when it's someone not directly who is an expert in user experience, but also not involved in the project necessarily. Can come in, take a look. I've had experience where I have found probably 70 to 80% of uh, issues that would have not been uncovered until it got rolled out. A usability test, 70, 80% more, I should say, features or issues in the product that wouldn't have been uncovered. You can't touch everything when you're doing a usability test. So uh, it's fast, it's cheaper, and it's broad. It's a broad sweep.
Mm-hmm. And it's an evaluation or analysis of the, again, those big tasks that people like. What is the goal of, or what goals is a user trying to accomplish with your application? That analysis is a review of those big tasks and whether or not someone can get things done. And depending on how big the application is, to your point, few hours or few days, the
Yep.
bigger the application, the longer that evaluation is going to take. And you want to, I think the key to what you said is you want to make sure it's not someone in your organization who's too close to the product that's being evaluated, but someone who understands what those heuristics are. Like what are the things that you're measuring or evaluating against? But then also, where are the areas of the application experience that need to be the focus? So definitely any project that we ever do, it starts with some sort of expert analysis. We
Absolutely.
also have the option to just do the expert analysis to give you a benchmark,
Yep.
to give you or identify low hanging fruit. And so that's really helpful for a lot of our clients for them to understand where are we in the spectrum of good to great and what do we need to do to get better.
Right.
And what can we do in the near term versus what are some of those bigger, more strategic, more intensive design efforts or research efforts that are necessary to figure out how to get something done?
Yeah, and we had a recent project where we were doing both, or actually we were doing the usability test, but took a scrub, took a few days just to do a heuristic. And I thought it was fascinating that some of the biggest problems, if something's in production, actually came out of the heuristic and not the usability test.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's where my number came in. I think we uncovered 80% of the issues that later came up in the usability testing. And then we had a bunch of stuff that was just never going to come up, but they were significant issues. So I am a huge fan of heuristics. I think there should be no project that shouldn't have where you don't take a little bit of time and do a heuristic evaluation. And then you don't, if that's all you can do, that it's a pretty strong thing to come in with if you have to make the trade-off of
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And also usability testing after a heuristic or expert analysis is what gives you a line of sight into areas to focus on in your testing and to make sure that what that expert found or identified, how prevalent is the issue, and then also some of the why.
Yeah.
So when you do the usability testing, you now have a basis for asking or understanding why is it confusing, complex, making it difficult to get the task done, that sort of thing. So, okay, so heuristic or expert analysis.
Mm-hmm.
So the next topic area around, or the next method, I should say, that is not one that involves your expert or an expert, is having your teams eat their own cooking. So doing some sort of internal testing. And you have a story about this or an experience?
I mean, I do, and I've seen a lot of companies that do this well. This can work both, internal teams kind of using products that aren't in production, but it's also a good one. This is really good when you have something maybe even already out there and you want to look at enhancements, or you want to validate some enhancements, or you just kind of want to solidify things, is eating your own cooking. So again, I worked on that. It was a practice management solution, so it kind of had everything, and it could apply. Really, you could see it applying to all kinds of work. Managing your calendar, managing your contacts,
project management.
Yes, thank you. That's the easier way of saying it. And what we did was we actually were using the even pre-beta version internally, because while our target audience might have been a little different, some of the tasks overlap in terms of that project management. So what happened was we were about to make people eat our cooking that we couldn't stomach. I mean, in other words, as we started using it in-house and trying to really use it in real life scenarios for projects, we found that people were abandoning it because of certain features not being there. And it really uncovered the headache of not having those features, or having just some bad experience in the product. It really brought those to surface at how, not only that it was a problem, but how significant it was when the team bailed and said, we can't do our work, or not effectively if we use it. So I've seen it, IBM's been pretty well known. A lot of their products, they roll out internally. I mean, they definitely, or my experience with, they eat their own cooking, and a lot of enhancement requests and a lot of changes to features came out of that over time.
Like Lotus 1, 2, 3. I remember.
Same time, that rolled out internally. And a lot of things. I think even things like App Server probably.
Yes, exactly. So the one thing I will caution in this scenario is putting your product in the hands of your team in examples where your team is primarily 20 and 30 somethings, for example, and you're creating solutions for 60 somethings and above. So when you think about putting the tools or the applications in the hands of your teams, consider the fact that they do not have characteristics that are similar to the demographic you serve. And so when you think about challenges with vision or memory or complexity or technical proficiency, some of those things will not surface in your team using the product where there might be challenges that exist. So be careful. This is not one that everyone can just broadly apply where they think it makes sense.
Absolutely. It can be very, very different. The needs can be very, very different.
Yes. So if we have anyone on listening to us, please tell us your name, where you're from, if you have any questions or comments. So when I think about usability testing, one of the biggest challenges or the longest pole in the tent, as they say, is recruitment. Yes. So in everything that we're sharing today, these are ways for you to get feedback more efficiently. In a lot of cases, more cost-effective ways to get that feedback. They might take longer in some cases, like with your teams using the product. It might take a little bit of time for them to use it, for you to really get that because you might not be able to use all the features the first day. So you might have to be patient around the expectation that they've got to use it for a couple of weeks, like a beta. You give people an opportunity to use it, but then implement some sort of feedback loop.
Yes.
So they can let you know what's going on. Lean user testing. I have a story to tell about this one. So years ago, I can recall having a product and having different versions of how to approach the same experience or aspect of the product experience. And so the team went round and round. Which way is the best approach? Which one follows the same paradigm as the rest of the application? And so it became an ongoing conversation. And so, okay, some of us said time out. Let's figure out how we can just put the pause on everyone giving their argument for why version or approach A is better than approach B, and let's get some feedback. So we were in a situation where access to customers, we didn't have the time, nor did we have easy access. So what do? Printed those two versions out, posted them on the wall in a high traffic area in the office, put a little post-it of what was going on in terms of, we're looking for your feedback. These two areas are illustrations of this part of the application, and ask people to take the post-its and then write down their thoughts and post it on the one they preferred. Ran that for a couple of days, sent it off to other folks that were remote via Figma. So now we've got some feedback that's like right in front of us. Others are, we're sending them out the link to the Figma file. They're coming back with feedback or providing their feedback in the tool as comments. And so these two methods allowed us to get feedback pretty quickly.
Yes.
Probably within a week.
Yes.
And that feedback was coming from people in support, in QA. So organizations that are looking for issues or who are addressing issues all day, every day. So the really brilliant thing about that was you're getting feedback from them on things. And if there's an opportunity to follow up with them, they're right there, easily accessible.
Right. Yes. And, I love lean user testing. And a lot of my stories, so I think this is also a good one for when you already have, for instance, a product rolled out and you want to get some quick testing on concepts even. Features you're thinking about, you're not really sure. Beauty of lean testing is making that quick decision to abandon the hardest thing, pivot or persevere. So I worked on a cloud-based product and a SaaS-based product. And what we would do is, and you have to carefully do it. You don't want to kind of tick users off or, give them an impression something's coming. But we put a feature there that wasn't really even working. Sometimes it was just like the lipstick, the visual. And we would, either indicate, oh, future beta version, or it was some aspect of it that where you could kind of fake it. I hate to say it that way, but it's kind of like faking it. And what we were able to do was see how many people used the feature or signed up to be notified that was their currency when the feature was released. And it gave us a really good idea. One, did they see it, if it was a really important feature, but two, did they care? So if we have to prioritize, you got a million things you want to do and you're trying to prioritize what's going to resonate the most. We would use methods like that, and that would help us know to focus on the feature A, and B, maybe accelerate it in the roadmap. So things like that were fun to do. They were just really interesting to do. If you want to, we did things where you actually masked your company name. So we would look at Google Analytics and search results and how many people were clicking through, depending on, are we going to go with billing or are we going to go with document management as a focus? Well, let's put some fakeness out there with different marketing messages and see where we got the most clicks. We did that in a day. The money was put in, some of the Google ads, things like that, just to get the traffic there. But we were able to, within a day, get enough traffic going where those search results were appearing to make a decision. These people clicked when we focused on billing. Very few if we focus on document. So, hey, that just helped us. We need to focus in this area. So
what percentage would you say in each of those scenarios of the two features? What percentage of the people coming back in that data did you see in each instance?
Oh, in that case, it was like a 90-10. And really, I think the thing that was so eye-opening was we were already running in the wrong direction, convinced, based on some of it based on research, that was the first thing we should do, was the last thing people picked. So, I mean, it gave us, we shifted the entire roadmap, based on that, because we saw immediately, we're not going to drive the traffic to sign up for this subscription based on if that's our main marketing message. It's not distinguishing us. So,
wow.
yes, so it was huge. It was huge.
You just hit like behavioral experimentation.
Yeah.
What then fed into marketing messaging. There's so much that can come out of this sort of exercise that's directly and indirectly related to the product experience and those supportive areas of sales. Like, what is the message that you're conveying to your customer and the experience that you're bringing to them as well, or delivering to them as well?
Yeah, exactly. And some things you really can hit the street on depending on the product. So I know, you worked on the mobile app that kind of targeted everyone in a way a while back. And that's a case where you could hit the street, and just say, hey, real quick, which one of these two? What would you do on this one? What would you, or would you use this? Whatever it is. Currency is important if you're really trying to test whether you abandon a concept or maybe an innovative idea. So I think that's an important thing people have to understand as well, is when you do lean testing, especially when it comes to those kind of decisions, you need people there's some kind of currency they need to cough up. And that doesn't have to be money. It could be a phone number. That's big currency.
Or their email address.
Hey, when the beta's out, I'm signing up. So that's kind of a form of currency, depending on
And that gives the indication that people are more likely than not interested in finding out more, potentially purchasing and using and that sort of thing. So it gives you an indication of behaviorally what direction they're going in.
Yes. Yes.
I love it. Let's talk about analytics and the value of getting information like feedback widgets and analytics on the back end. What I've seen some interesting things around that. What about yourself?
Oh, yes. And this is one that you can use with a product that's, I think you should use this whether or not you're in the crunch for usability testing or not.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
especially if you're in a crunch for usability testing and maybe you have a new feature you want to enhance that's out there, or you want to uncover pain points and needs not being met, there are all kinds of things you can do. So we released a new feature in a product once, and we weren't sure exactly how we wanted to build it out. We knew it was an MVP version. So we had, hey, beta tag. People would use it and they'd be prompted and they could dismiss so they didn't see it anymore. Hey, give us feedback. How did you like it? What's missing? There are a lot of different things you can do in the app. And then, of course, your metrics. If you look at your metrics and you're fully interested in, you can learn a lot from what users are actually doing versus doing a usability test for a feature. Maybe you can just go in there and see that it's a spider web of clicking, when something's located in a specific place. So,
and the good thing about this type of feedback, like that's in app or that's metrics coming from click and time on page and that sort of thing, is it gives you a starting point to then have a follow-up conversation with either those users or other users. So now you can have a conversation that's more about the why. And how do you change things and that sort of thing. As I hear you telling these different stories, what resonates the most with me is that a lot of young teams out here today are not aware of or don't know how to employ these sorts of methods. And this is why it's so important to make sure that, and that's probably another day's conversation, is making sure that you have access to or someone on your team who's versed in these different methods or knows how to knows when it's time to say, let's go reach out to someone who's creative around different feedback, summative and otherwise methods that we don't know how to employ. Let's go connect with someone who can.
Absolutely.
These are all like really, really critical ways, and they're not all expensive or a heavy effort.
Right. I think the Heuristic's a perfect example of that. Like, do we need somebody to come in, an expert, a UX expert, who, can give us that, high level, not even high level, that doesn't have to be high level, but that kind of expert analysis, get us started. And maybe that can drive not only some of the changes you make, but where you're next. That, I think you mentioned it earlier. Okay, if we're going to invest in more formal testing, more costly things, where should that focus be? What do we need to focus on based on that heuristic? So, I think I'm just a fan of heuristic.
And what I've learned in my experience is the importance of engaging someone who understands cognition and the way people learn, how they gather information, how they navigate through applications, because sometimes there are situations where people don't have for example, a clear mental model of the objects in the application or how they relate. And for someone who does not understand those cognitive phenomena or the terminology, they may not know A, how to identify those things, B, how to articulate that they exist, and even the most important one is what to do to solve for those things.
Right. And that becomes, go ahead, Kenya.
No, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, and that becomes an even bigger issue when you have people who've been really, really close to a project. And I think you kind of tickle my memory about a project, and we both worked on, where that was the case. There was people so embedded, so familiar, they'd all become experts. And you didn't understand how these non-experts are coming in and, oh, but this is really easy. We've simplified it. They've forgotten basic things. And I don't mean this as an insult at all. It's, you get so close, but basic things like some of the concepts they were presenting that were main features with no help for a true blank slate user coming in. And it was something as simple as, hey, there's no contextual help. There's no in-app help. People don't even know what this is, let alone the relationship of all these features that have to come together. So, yeah, I think that's again where an outside person will be that blank slate user sometimes and uncover those basic heuristics again.
Yes, and kind of jumping back into the eating your own cooking. I feel like with that scenario, you have the opportunity, people who are close to the product, maybe where there was some skepticism about what could work. And, you know, you as a team or there was a consensus to say, let's move forward with this feature in this way. But if you're a part of that internal team and you were a part of those conversations around, this might not be the best approach, but let's just test it out to see if it works. You now, in this scenario of being in the driver's seat, not on the development side, but on the actual side of a user, you now have the opportunity to say, this was not the right approach. The conversations we had were valid. Now we need to go back to the drawing board and kickstart that conversation back up that we were having about approach version B or the other option that we had to take, because now I definitely see it doesn't work. Whereas if you never actually got in the driver's seat in the application, it would have been out there, and usability testing or not, you may not have gotten that feedback until things started to come through the support channels.
Right.
So,
and the eating your own cooking, I just kind of made the argument you were making earlier about, hey, here are the things to be aware of. Back to all the expertise and closeness to a project, you have to keep that in mind when you're doing the eat your own cooking. Sometimes those teams eating their cooking are experts at cooking, so they may not reflect that
the novice
or non-expert user.
Yes. And that's another key is any of these methods that we're recommending don't necessarily work alone. They have to work in tandem with other activities. The key is that you have to know what's the gap and how do you fill that gap with a different mechanism to get that information.
Right.
That I find is the hardest thing for a lot of teams to identify, is if you don't have the expertise or the experience, you don't know what you don't know.
You don't know what you don't know. Yeah.
So we have about 15 more minutes. Are there any questions from any viewers today? If not, we will keep it going. Let's dig into, so the lean user testing. You talked about the behavioral experiments. We talked about being scrappy around getting that feedback within your organization. Where have you seen, what is the cost? You talked about it a little bit, but in terms of the cost of having to build out that experience to actually look like something real, or to say coming soon, that kind of thing. When you look at the returns on that sort of effort, talk a little bit about that.
So that is, you're no longer, so when I say lean, so if you're truly building out a prototype or your product, essentially beta, it's not lean testing anymore. The whole point of, but if I'm just adding, and I'll give an example, we were looking at do people who are using billing software, using our product as part of their billing, do they also want us to get smarter and start tracking activities that are occurring in our system so they can decide whether they need to bill on it?
Mm-hmm.
So one thing, people always say, yeah, we'd like to have that.
Mm-hmm.
So what we ended up doing as a start was just a quick checkbox in these like time entry things or on activities that our system did. So calendar events. Um, I'm trying to documents, that sort of thing that you were working on. Rather than build in like timers, which eventually we did in the documents or when a person was doing specific things, we were like, hey, let's put a checkbox, some kind of checkbox that says billable activity or track activity. I can't remember the details. That was it. That's all we did. And then we had on Hover, that was a beta feature, and we paired that with the in-app. Hey, leave us feedback if you want. But in the meantime, we were able to capture. And for our developers, I think that took, QA had to be involved. It was really, really fast, cheap. Get the checkbox on there. We could look and see, okay, how many users and then how many records were they checking? Done. And again, we had, in this case, we had several thousand users in the system. So we were able to get that data, I think, within 2-3 days that people were excited. They wanted it tracked. And it was like, okay, yes, let's do this. Let's move it up. And then the next thing we did was, okay, what's the best way to serve? Truly, the best way to service it. And we did quick A/B testing. Doing usability testing later on. Once we decided we had enough evidence to spend the money on the features. So,
and the key to what you just said was the fact that you were using multiple methods. And it required you to look at that lean user testing feedback or insight and couple that with analytics or instrumentation on the back end to look at pages being visited and that other detail. And those two things together gave you a rich story. But one without the other, it required you, or it left a couple of questions in your mind in terms of unknowns that you needed to get answers to.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. And that's important for all these things. So I know we're talking about you don't have time or money to do a formal, traditional usability test. So it's not saying you need to do all these things together. Some of them don't even work for certain things. You got to know what to pick based on your problem, based on the product, based on where the product is and its life. Is it already out there? Is it just a concept? But if you can ever get sprinkled through multiple methods, then it becomes really powerful because you can triangulate, you can synthesize that data. You may learn a little something different from each, method you perform. Lean testing is a feature gonna yes, no, maybe,
and then why?
Lean testing, lean user testing can be really good. In-app feedback can get into more details. Are we hitting the mark? Are we not hitting the mark? So it's like the heuristic can give you that broader sweep, detailed but broader across an app or across a product. So it's fun synthesizing this stuff.
Yes, it is. And one thing I want to ask is, can you go back, because you kind of answered my question, but I want to make sure that our listeners heard you. What helps, or what do you use to determine which is the best method?
Okay, that's a good question and can be a hard one.
It depends.
It depends. I mean, you always hate to say it depends, but the fact is it does depend. You have to look at access, to an audience. I don't want to do in-app testing if I don't have an app, or if I only have 4 users, or they're only coming in once every 6 months. I don't know. It can depend on the industry. It can depend on the stage of the product. All those things matter when you're determining what method you want to use. The one I'd say is kind of applies across the board is the heuristic.
Absolutely.
That can be an existing project. It can be a concept even, at probably limited if you're really only at a conceptual level, but that's a good one. But I really think the stage of where you are in development or not in development, that is one of the heavier influencers as well. Is it an enhancement to a feature? Is it a new feature? Is it a whole new product? So
right. And that the key is that the heuristic is that kind of broad sweeping opportunity no matter what.
Yeah.
And if you do a heuristic on an existing application, you identify opportunities to innovate.
Yes.
On something new, on a new product, because maybe it's too old to make updates or to really be innovative around applying best practices that are relevant today. Maybe that's not possible. So doing that heuristic on the existing product will then allow you or give you the information that allows you to say, okay, what does our newer version look like from an experience and capability standpoint?
Yes. And now you go in with the new lens, even on the existing products, by the way. I mean, I know we keep pulling back to the AI, the smarter apps, but, it's just a new lens. I won't get off on a tangent on that.
I totally get it.
You can definitely anything.
I totally agree. So just to recap, we talked about the fact that these 4 methods can take the place of usability testing when you are either strapped for time, money, access to customers or prospects. So you can do that expert analysis. And you yourself do not want to do that. You want to go and seek out an expert like Deanne and I. You want the expert to look at things from the context of your user, from a task-based perspective, to give you insights around how your application experience either supports or violates common heuristics. All right, Deanne, number 2.
Eat your own cooking. I'm looking at heuristic again, but eat your own cooking. So I think this one lends itself best to products that are either at least in a pre-beta stage. So develop something better have already, hopefully already occurred. But this works really well when you're pre-beta, beta, or even an already in production product, because your team might help work out enhancements, pain points, challenges of actual usage.
Okay. All right. Now, lean user testing.
Oh, me again. Lean user testing, again, can be used for, I think, any stage. It lends itself particularly well to the very, very early stages of even pre-development stages of deciding if you want a feature or a product, period. But it also works. You can still do lean testing even for a product you already have out there. So you gave the example, you were trying to test different designs for a new feature in an existing project. Same with me when we had a project deployed, that cloud-based product. We still could look at new features or enhancement to features in a lean fashion.
That's right. And then finally, we have real-time in-app feedback. This is the instrumentation or analytics that work on the back end in terms of following along your customer or user in terms of their behaviors when they're navigating through your application or site. So page visits, time on a page. Did they actually go through the task or did they abandon before they completed it? So this information coupled with some of these other methods give you a really rich picture of where to focus your attention, and the others will give you more of the why around how to address those challenges that exist. None of these presume that you do not engage with a customer at some point to get more of that why. These are just ways to get that information more quickly or more cheaply if usability testing is not an option in the near term. So that is all we had. Deanne, did you have any final thoughts or comments rather for the audience?
No, I don't think so. It just did hit me though back on the lean testing piece that, and this is really for any testing, but another good place when you not sure how to access your users, a lot of product managers, a lot of UXers go to industry conferences, you know, that sort of thing. That's a really great place as well to do some lean testing and even some of the other stuff if you can get, you know, to those people in those kind of environments. I did want to throw that out there because you obviously, you know, are around your target audience oftentimes when you're at those industry different types of conferences. So that's another good place, especially, you know, I know we get a lot of product managers, you know, watching this. That's a really good place to leverage your UXers or you as a PM, whoever it may be, is capturing, running some of that lean testing right there at the conference, whether it's putting things up or, hey, I've got a little booth here. You want some swag? Take a look at this. 2 minutes. Which one would you use it? Will you sign up? You know, now currency. So anyhow.
Yes, I love that. So, hey, listen, we are at the end of today's conversation. We want to thank you again for watching, and we'll put out next week's topic soon. If you have any ideas, shoot Dr. Kenya or Dr. Deanne a quick message on LinkedIn. Thank you again for watching, and we look forward to seeing you again soon.
Awesome.
Goodbye.
Have a good one.
Bye.